Welcome back to Beyond the Pump, where today we have a very special guest, Dasha Agoulnik, who is a world-renowned researcher and professional coach and business owner in the world of gut health and really just all things health coaching. So thank you so much for joining us today. I believe that Steve had a great topic that he wanted to chat about. Some insights.
Well, first off, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
It's so good to always see you.
Appreciate you coming on, Dasha, and spending some time with us. But yeah, I think out of the gates, as Andrew so bluntly threw it over to me, I wish there was a ball we could throw across the screen.
We should get one.
I always find that there's a story, and it's maybe not always like the coolest and biggest story of all, but people in health and wellness have a reason that they got into business initially. And it was this whole like, hey, I need to solve a problem for myself because I have this thing, whatever it might be. And you probably didn't go down that road of, I want to start this business and go out and solve the problem for everybody else, like as your first step through this journey. So I would love to just kick this off with, what got you into here? Like what back then got you to where you're at today? What were some of those underlying reasons? And kind of give us a little bit of that journey that you've gone through.
So I guess my answer is going to be a little bit multifaceted because when I was telling you guys earlier, I was like, I was born with it, boys. And that's really the truth of it. When I was younger, I, had a candy store outside my bedroom. I had lemonade stands every single weekend with my friends.
Wait, you sold candy only to your family?
Yes. I would go. My sales was me going downstairs and forcing people to come upstairs to my store to buy candy from me.
How old?
Was my business model.
How old were you when you did
that? I was probably like 7.
I love that.
Yeah. But then when I went to college, I started the entrepreneurship club at UMass Amherst, and then I got a entrepreneurship scholarship to attend Tufts University for my master's degree. And then I went back and I pitched at their pitch competition as an alumni. And I won that 100K pitch competition for my protein powder company. So when I say like I was born with business in my blood, like I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. Now, where health and fitness comes into it is that my parents were both cancer researchers. So I loved biology growing up. I thought I was going to be a doctor. I went so heavy into research because, you see your parents, you go do what they're doing. But also, I just love knowing why. Like, why is something happening? Why are we the way that we are? And so my whole life I was asking, why is it like this? Why is it like that? Thought I was going to be a researcher, thought I was going to be a doctor, finally graduated and was like, no, I want to really focus on nutrition because I'm nerding out about biochemistry and macro and micronutrients and how we absorb and digest food. And during that time, I think what got me so passionate and interested in funneling into that is because at that point, I had done so much research about the human body that I was like, the gut is it. And I dove deep into it. And I was like, okay, if the gut is where it's at, I need to learn about nutrition. I need to learn about how we're doing this so that I can overcome any disease. Like my whole goal always in college, undergrad was like, how do I build the healthiest human being from the inside out based off of what we actually have control over in our life, which is our diet and our exercise and, our lifestyle. And it was like, I wanted to create the most efficient human, which is one of my other problems, which I'm sure you guys all probably know. Like I am efficiency queen. And it's part of that is like the love of finding the most efficient way to create a human and creating the fittest human, which is different than what we see on social media. Because if you come at it from a biological perspective, it's like, how do we create a human being, a Homo sapien, that can reproduce its genetics the most amount of times and live the longest in order to reproduce those genetics the most amount of times. So all that spiel, I started having my own gut issues in graduate school at Tufts. And I went through like 2 years before they diagnosed me with celiac disease, just like back and forth with the testing and all these things. days. And I just got so passionate about becoming this liaison for people where,
Mhm.
the doctor's not helping you. You can't really help yourself right now. You need direction. You need someone that's going to be on your side when you go to the doctor's office, that's guiding you through how to actually
Yeah.
use our healthcare system at this point. And so that's what we created. And now
Mhm.
we've gotten hormone certification to help people become that liaison. And do we do coaching, and the protein, of course, came alongside it. So it's kind of this umbrella now that's just escalated.
All right, that's awesome. So going back to young Dasha, who had a candy store outside of her bedroom at 7 years old, talk a little bit more about the entrepreneurial side of the journey, right? Like you say, you've always had it in you, and I feel like you're downplaying that just a little bit, right? And for me, I started my first like business when I was in high school, going out and mowing lawns, and had 35 accounts after my first year, and I was a kid making, I mean, literally 12, $1,300 every single weekend during the summer. And it was like, I just need more and more and more. And let me go find more and let me go in the drive. And then eventually work 40 hours a week as an electrician and then go deliver pizzas. It's like, yeah, I'm good working 70 hours a week because there's benefits of A, make a bunch of money, but also B, have no time to spend the money. Right. So it's like, you're rich. I didn't start at 7 years old though. So I'm just curious around some of the things that maybe drove you, maybe some of the fun lessons you learned throughout all that, and what you think you did back then that maybe actually propelled or launched you into where you're at today.
I think I always, and I think I told you guys about this. I've always loved, so not only do I love the why, but I love understanding like human like the psychological behavior around the whole process is why we do the things we do, is much more like there's a mental component to a lot of it.
Mhm.
And so I think what I nerded out on was I created a game around selling for myself. And I never really made money selling, to be honest. Like, because again, I was grounded upon these two like very well established cancer researchers working for the top pharmaceutical companies in the world, and everything was evidence based in my household, like everything was rational in my household. And so when I got this opportunity to play games and like understand more
Mhm.
about, the buying process and how to sell, I think that's what really drew me to it. There's probably a lot of like childhood trauma around it too, around just like my parents coming from a different country and like struggling with finances, and like me
Mhm.
seeing this as maybe some game potential. Like I probably, there's some deep rooted stuff in there too. When is there not though, really?
Most everybody has something these days, I would assume. Andrew, you can talk to that better than I can, but you know,
Not in the time we have allocated.
I don't think it's trauma. It's just like your upbringing, right? It's like,
experience.
right.
It's just
I
experience.
say the word trauma, but it's really just like your upbringing and what you were surrounded with in your environment, and that truly does shape who you are.
I mean,
Mhm.
I feel like, and Andrew will yell at me at this one. Maybe we'll have to edit this out. I don't know. But in 2024, we call every level of our experience as children trauma, just so that way we can like justify the way we act because of something. And it's like, I'm good with the traumas that I had if they're traumas because it helped me get to where I'm
Yeah.
at.
Yeah, seriously. I think it's because I don't know the other word for it. Like, what is the other word? My
Lived experiences would be, generally speaking, how we would categorize those. Because when we think about trauma, I mean, it always comes down to behaviorism of stimulus response, and there's usually an adaptation on the back end of that. And depending upon what the adaptation looks like, it could be maladaptive, it could be you adaptive. And so that's where it's like, if someone beat you as a kid and now you have dissociative identity disorder, which posits that you weren't equipped to deal with a certain situation, that's where you then had to put together this other persona to help navigate, from a mental status perspective. Then that's kind of what we mean by adaptive or non-adaptive. But I mean, when they talk about type 1 and type 2 errors, like, is it a false positive diagnosis? Is it a false negative? Do we upplay it? Do we downplay it? Like, PTSD is one of the most overdiagnosed mental illnesses, or mental conditions, I should say, that permeates 2024, and they're really starting to cut back on that, especially at the Veterans Administration. So, to categorize everything as trauma, lowercase t trauma, which is a long-term chronic, like mild dosage, that's always just in the background, more environmental usually, versus capital T trauma, which is acute, usually like a car accident, something very, very pronounced, some kind of domestic incident. That's kind of how we try to categorize those things. But if there's something maladaptive that came from it that doesn't serve you and it causes a certain amount of clinical distress, that's kind of how we would delineate whether it's actually trauma or whether it's just something that you're having to deal with or navigate on a subclinical level. So just some insights onto trauma that wasn't part of this episode.
So fascinating, though.
Mhm.
I take it back. I don't have trauma. I have a life experience. I do not self-diagnose myself with anything, and will refer out to the appropriate professional for such.
And I WebMD everything. I have a lump. I have a lab lump on my lat that I probably should go get checked out at some point. But and I think that there's just so much to dive into when it comes to what prompts people to go down the entrepreneurial route versus what prompts them to go down the corporate safety route. Some people really do appreciate the freedom and the uncapped earnings, and some people like the idea of showing up, punching out 9 to 5, and it's pretty refreshing to hear that you have, and Steve, a thread of this going way back to beyond what people would probably have assumed. Most people start thinking about professional development, because I did a grass cutting business. I had one account and I fucking hated that shit. You couldn't get me to do another one out there in the Georgia heat and fucking 100 degrees at the age of like 11 to cut Mr. Nelson's lawn right next door. And man, I fucked it up. It was terrible. I like cutting X's into this guy's lawn. Like, it wasn't it. So
One lawn, that's a lot of work and effort to go cut one lawn. But when you put a similar amount of work and effort to go cut 30, plus you're hanging out with at the time like your best friend and everything, you go
that's
and
true.
you amortize that and whatnot. All of a sudden, like you're buying
Mhm.
your own bagel sandwiches with your Snapple on Saturday morning, hanging out sitting on the curb waiting for the 8 a.m. You can start your lawnmowers to go off. There's something fun
Mhm.
about that.
Does Snapple still exist?
Yep.
It does.
Probably.
They're just
Brandon
not in
would
the
know most about that.
yeah, they're not in the glass bottles anymore. I remember the first
Ooh,
time I seen
downgrade.
it. It's not Snapple if it's not in the glass. It's
Yeah, you gotta get. I thought the whole point was
mhm.
the snap at the top.
I saw a
Do they
bottle
still
once.
do the like the fact or whatever
Of
inside the
course,
cap?
Brandon knows.
I have no idea. I saw the bottle and I was just like, this is it looks like it kind of looked like Arizona iced tea, but
Ugh,
yeah.
Of
They're
course.
two different things. I don't know.
yeah,
That was part of the thing. Yeah, it was sad. It was
yeah.
sad. Yeah.
It's funny because I actually did the same exact thing growing up, Steve. I had a Snapple and a bagel sandwich every Saturday morning after dance
Oh.
class.
Oh.
Yep.
That's how you
Just
guys
a
are
thing.
bonded.
Just a
Yeah.
thing. I
Steve,
love it.
we're actually maybe we're both souls of the same like human that's like
I
going
mean,
through.
I am completely from that part of the world, so you're
Actually,
one
yeah,
less generation I feel like than I am per se, but
that does make
we're
sense.
over there. We're over there.
The
So
Northeast. You guys are
the
wild.
Northeast.
Northeast. I think it's like that
When I
deep
say
within-
world, I don't mean America, Andrew.
Oh, well, all right. That's fair. If we're going back that far, let's
We're on
check
the
our
other side
geography.
of Eurasia. You guys are over on that side of
My
Eurasia, the
Asia.
right side, and
No,
it's
I
called
get it.
Eurasia now. It's
I said
Eurasia.
my Asia. Your Asia.
You people.
All right. Anyways,
I'm Asian.
I am not Asian.
Yeah.
I mean,
Don't claim that. Don't claim that. We'll edit this out. Like, I guess to kind of bridge your experience as an entrepreneur, and like you have a very storied background in academia, very accomplished, and obviously that's helped inform a lot of your recent entrepreneurial endeavors. I think that there's a common saying that research is me search. Can you maybe expound upon how your own clinical condition around celiac has now informed and kind of helped shape your professional perspective as it relates to being a health advocate?
Yeah, so that actually started way before my celiac. And so when I got to college, I think what really truly started it was I was a dancer for 12 years of my life. And when I got to college,
Mm-hmm.
I lost that. I
Mhm.
lost the ability to dance. I was so driven, committed. Dasha, you're going to get your PhD. You're going to do all these things. I was like, great, I don't have time for these extracurriculars. And so I picked up bodybuilding.
Mhm.
And then it became the efficiency perspective of my background came into play. And I was like, okay, I don't want to be in here running if that's not going to build the most effective like health status for myself. And so I
Mhm.
started, I was really into research. I started PubMed. I think at that time, um, ASPE down in Tampa with
Mhm.
Jacob Wilson.
Mhm.
Was that his name, the researcher that
I
was like
believe so.
really coming out at that time. Um, and so then I went and I like interned there at like the sports research, and Quest was at that time coming out with like MCT and like ketone powders and like,
Oh shit.
I was, yeah, that was like when like the ketogenic diet was getting started. Like, and
Mhm.
so I became really fascinated with not only building from that bodybuilding perspective, but as you know, a lot of that is going to be nutrition when it comes into it. So,
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
where I started, like really, truly at the root of it, what I was interested in. And I think because that's
Mhm.
where what I was interested in, it naturally led into understanding nutrition more because we all know, like, 90% of what you train is done in the kitchen, and the 10% at the gym is like the rest of it. You can perfect that quite quickly. But when it comes to perfecting nutrition for a broad audience, and now you incorporate disease aspects, like then Dasha got really interested.
So you really were attracted to the complex nuances of how that really multi-directional relationship goes.
Right. My whole goal was like, I want to cure every disease, right? Like, my parents were curing cancer at the time, right? So I came
Mhm.
into it, I'm like, okay, no, screw cancer. I'm going to cure all diseases with this idea,
Right.
right?
One up. One up.
Yeah, like, right, I'm gonna one up them. And so then I decided, okay, so what is if we were to create the healthiest diet for the most amount of people that, like, no matter what gut status, no matter if you had diabetes or heart disease or kidney disease, like whatever you had, what would be the healthiest diet that we could create for the most amount of people? Because generally speaking, exercise wise, there's not much like the healthiest exercise, resistance train 4 to 5 times a week, go do it for 45 minutes, you'll be good to go. Learn how to train heavy and hard. When it comes to nutrition, it's so nuanced because there's so much about the biological background that you come from, your genetics, your environment, all these things. And that's what got me super interested in honing
Mhm.
in more from a dietitian perspective.
Mhm. Well,
So so I know the answer, and we have some inside jokes on the here, as I'm sure you could assume, but the answer to both of those things is actually you're supposed to resistance train 7 to 8 times a week, really hard. That's by far the best for your body. Don't rest. And you
Yes.
never eat lunch, and that's going to be the best thing that you can do for yourself. So
No, you forgot about this. I thought it was you work out twice a day. So it's actually 14 times a week that you
14.
work
Well,
out.
I
One
was giving you off
outside, one
some
inside. And
reasoning.
if you get the reference to this, I'm sorry that you've gone down that rabbit hole.
While while you stare into the sun so you get the morning sun in your eyes.
Right, right. With the
I mean,
cold shower right
And
after
one.
you exercise, because I hear that it's actually catabolic at that point.
I mean, there's a 150 soft program that's emerging that seems like it's going to be.
Oh, good.
But
Andrew's
you're
dying
you both
inside.
forgot the most quintessential element of that is that water is a crutch, and in fact, the less water you drink, the less you will weigh. And if you drink so little water, eventually you don't worry about your weight at all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Eventually,
I can get
Yeah.
on that. I can get on board with that.
because you take a dirt nap.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
But
Andrew. I threw you off on your mind where you were going there. You were in flow, right in your notes, so you knew what to say, and I had to
they
derail you,
make
dude.
they make no logical progression. It's literally just like scribbles all over the place. I'm actually just drawing dinosaurs. Um, No, but and I think that all this tongue in cheek aside, there is a lot of conflicting information out there around what should I be doing, what should I not be doing, and without injecting a lot of the nuances of how people's lifestyles and their financial situations and their support systems, those obviously add a third dimension that we really can't go into much depth. But perhaps you could share like the 5 to 10 tactical things that consumers in 2024 should be aware of that would actually be meaningful for them to pay attention to as it relates to their own journeys. drink water, walk around,
Yeah.
whatever
Okay.
that is for you.
So, this is like a big question because and in order to respond to it best, I need to understand what you are asking when it comes to consumers. So, are you talking about consumers as in like packaged goods, or are you thinking like consumers as in like we're buying off the shelves, or are you saying just like, hey, as a human being in this
For,
generation, what do I
for
need?
me as a
People in the health
client,
industry.
like I'm busy
Yeah.
doing my thing. I go work out often and I think I eat well and I do all the things. What are the best 5 to 10 things that I should be doing on a daily basis or weekly or whatever frequency that is relevant in order to start to achieve that optimal health, that ideal thing from a, not that I just look good, but rather I'm actually healthy and I'm fending off those diseases to the best of my ability.
Oh, awesome. So at Corporate Form, we preach the 5 speed pillars. So when you think about any sort of disease, dysfunction, it's all rooted at some sort of inflammation, whether that be a genetic change, genetic predisposition, something triggers that genetic change to happen, or you were born with it and you started with it, right? And that's what's causing that inflammation. At the end of the day, inflammation in general is a bad thing if you cannot recover from it. So, when we think about stress and inflammation, what are the 5 things in our day to day lives that cause our bodies stress that we might not actually realize? And those 5 things, we use the speed pillars. So, S stands for sleep, P is going to be personal stress, E is going to be environmental stress, the second E is exercise, and the last one is D, diet. And I'm happy to go into each one of those a little bit deeper if it's helpful, but that's what we preach at Corporate Form, because if you can take those 5 pillars and now you can optimize those 5 things, that's how I think I posted last week. I was at like a mastermind from like 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day, and my recovery was like 9 out of 10 every single day. And it's like, okay, what did I do to actually be able to handle that stress and that tolerance when you're like talking and so active and you're up and all the things.
How do we know when, obviously you have the 5 pillars, the
Mhm.
speed acronym framework, which is phenomenal. How do people know when to leverage that and how to apply it? I guess
Mhm.
is really the assessment criteria that we're just trying to understand
And
for.
Yeah.
I would throw in too, like, what is an example that somebody can do without maybe having the diagnosis or so to speak, of here's the overarching thing, but like an easy one. Hey, you should get enough sleep every night, right? Like we know that on average, general people are not getting enough sleep. So what does that look like? So what are some examples to kind of lumping that in with what Andrew had said?
Yeah. Okay, great. So this is how we can apply it. So first and foremost, if you're listening, what I want you to do is I want you to write out and jot out all the symptoms that you're currently experiencing. Acne, brain fog, fatigue, jitteriness, Andrew, other things from your energy drinks.
I'm just trying to get some
whatever it
palpitation.
is, whatever it is that you're feeling, I want you to write it out, all your symptoms, okay? And now I want you to go and you go through all of those 5 speed pillars. Again, they are sleep, personal stress, and to put it in, and let me elaborate a little bit deeper onto that. So you want 7 to 9 hours of sleep. You're going to want personal stress. Think about, speaking of PTSD, think about an army veteran or a war veteran when they see fireworks versus someone who's just enjoying it with their family. That person who's enjoying it with their family is going to experience a very much more blissful rendition of fireworks at July 4th versus the veteran who might get triggered that, hey, this sounds like a bomb, and his body feels like, it's experiencing stress, even though environmentally, like there's nothing that's keeping him unsafe, but his body, his personal stress, right, how he's perceiving his environment is what's causing him a lot of stress. So when we take that extreme example and we can apply it to your personal life, that's including like work, relationship, kids, like all these things are self-perceived stress, because those things will always be there, but how we react to our environment, that's what we have full control over. And so that's that second pillar of personal stress. It's how we are talking to ourselves every single day. So sleep 7 to 9 hours, how we're talking to ourselves, then our environment. We're thinking, like you said, we are mainly water. So we're almost 80% water, and we breathe more than we eat, which means that we need to be thinking more about, the air that we're breathing. California forest fires is a great example of that. How much toxins are you breathing in? So setting up a HEPA filter in your home, setting up a reverse osmosis system for your water, all of those things are really important to your environment, right? And you can loop in things like mold, plastics, like all these things are toxins in our environment that we may need to avoid. Other things like allergies still trigger inflammation for certain individuals and can also be looped in as environment, right? Because those people have histamine reactions, maybe need to take medications on a daily basis as a result of, their environment. Now, that fourth one is exercise. We talked about too much and too little exercise jokingly, but both of those things can be stressors on the system. Not doing enough and doing too much. Same thing with diet, whether it's what we eat or how much we eat. How much we eat, like bulking and cutting, both will affect your gut and will affect the stress that your body is under. And we think about what are you exactly eating, that also can obviously, McDonald's versus Whole Foods, right? And so there's different components to it, but those five things, right? So now we think about, okay, if those are what's optimal, what's the elephant in the room out of those five pillars? What's the elephant in the room for myself? So I'll ask you guys, what is that for you all this week?
Stress.
Personal stress
So for me,
or
right,
environmental? Because remember, there's two.
Speed.
all-
Speed.
any stress that can potentially be involved in my life is in my life, but I actually have, through my experiences, I probably not probably I flourish around stress, so I will create stress in my life so I can keep going, because that's where I'm going to thrive the most and go there. But because of that, I'm also on or under a constant state of stress, like
Oh, he's holding back. He's
oh, I don't hold back. Listen, I'm way more recovered the next day after I have a bunch of caffeine the day before, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't traditionally
Mm-hmm.
normal. When I'm trying to focus and do work, I have heavy metal music playing so that way I can actually focus on my work. And I go and I wake up in the morning, I'm like, well, I might as well work out even though today's a rest day, because why not work out more and get that like stress out of my body. So for me, it's always constant stress. 98% of the time it's completely self-inflicted because it's just who I am and what I do.
right.
So
Okay, Brandon, what about you?
It's sleep. It
Sleep.
is sleep. Yeah. I just checked my I use Athletic, and it says I have a sleep depth, I think, of like 14 hours.
I'd be
Oh,
dead,
Oh, they do
bro.
sleep that. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it has sleep debt, but that's actually part of. I get part of that too is just trying to manage it as much as possible because of, I guess, my lifestyle. If that makes sense. Just because of typically weekends are later nights and you got to wake up early to go to the gym, so it's kind of like, I gotta get it all in, gotta fit it all in. But sleep for sure. I have been working on it though, so don't you worry. I noticed though, I have this bed and it has this little like adjustments. It's helped a ton. And so normally I wake up in the middle of the night and now I'm like sleeping all the way through. So I think my quality has gone up, but my sleep debt is going up. So I'm not getting enough, but the quality is going up, which is a good direction, I think.
great. Andrew, what about you?
Everything.
Hmm.
I think that, for me, it's definitely, I think my doctorate's probably causing the most stress right now. So that would probably be a personal thing. Which I mean is, downstream of or upstream of all the other things. Like you don't sleep enough, strength training is always a little funky. Your diet's going to then suffer a little bit. So yeah, I would say that that's probably the biggest constraint for me right now, which I mean, isn't unknown. And I think that that's a large component of understanding that you can't, being balanced is such a funny concept in 2024. People think that you have to be able to balance your personal relationships and have a fulfilling one of those, and at the same time be professionally fulfilled and thriving, and at the same time be physically thriving. And I think that in order to thrive, you really have to allocate a lot of time and attention, and there has to be a meaningful, almost intentional sense of neglect towards any one thing. Because the margins, like you can't balance everything, unfortunately, in my experience. So it's like, all right, doctorate, 2 more years of grind. Hopefully I don't develop any kind of crazy conditions along the way or have a complete
Which, by the
depression.
way, totally can happen, and is
Mhm.
why most people uh, develop any sort of autoimmune condition or whatever else, some sort of trigger of stress, right?
Yeah.
So I'm glad we've all shared our stressors. Sounds like personal stress is a really great example of it, but whatever you personally are experiencing, the listener right now that you've gone through, you've listed all your symptoms, you've thought out about all the speed pillars, and you chose one pillar, okay, whether that be sleep, personal stress, environmental stress, exercise, or diet. So we choose one of those pillars, and now we think of, and you can even ask ChatGPT this. You can ask, like, you can go to my Instagram. I have a bunch of just information around these topics. I have 50 plus ways to improve your health through these 5 pillars, 10 ways for each one. The whole point is, great. Now I have a problem that I'm now aware of, right? To improve my health. Mine is personal stress. So I know that if Steve's like, okay, now if he's meditating maybe 5 minutes every single day, he knows that that's like the one thing that he needs to focus on that's going to give him the biggest ROI. And it doesn't have to be meditating, but it might be
That's
something like journaling for clarity. It might be something like walking, or something to, reduce that stressor. And for you, Andrew, maybe it's something similar in that aspect. Brandon, for you, it's going to be something more like, making sure that you use something. What I like to teach is the 4-3-2-1 method, which is 4 hours before bed, you unplug from work. 3 hours before bed, you stop eating. 2 hours before bed, you stop drinking. 1 hour before bed, you stop looking at flashing lights or, electronics. Flashing lights. Yeah. And for Brandon,
Yeah,
maybe
he's a
that's true,
DJ.
actually. Now
Shut
that I say
down your
it
disco
out loud.
parties, Brandon.
He is a
Yeah.
DJ.
Yeah. So those would be just like mechanisms where it's like, okay, if I were to do one thing, remember I'm talking about you're talking to the person who cares about the most efficiency. If I can do one thing for my health this week, that's how you work backwards around it.
Yeah, and those are definitely very actionable, and I think that for the listeners, she hinted at and she humbly suggested that you go check out her resources and her social media. But there's a ton of great information out there, and obviously we can't cover the depths and breadth of everything that she has to offer. So please, just definitely want to make sure that you go check that out. If you have
I
any
was
questions.
not trying to plug, because y'all, I said ChatGPT first, but I do also understand that sometimes ChatGPT, for someone like me, actually, like I get a little overwhelmed by ChatGPT. I'm not like, because the comfort isn't there yet. And I also think, like, great, it's going to spew out 10 things, and then you can just keep asking it for 10 more things. And then you can keep defining it, for yourself. So whatever that looks like for you, go after it. Go get healthy.
Go get healthy. Amazing. I mean, are there any other lingering thoughts or any other questions as we start to brush up against time here? We've had your attention for about an hour now, and you've been so generous with sharing your expertise. Any closing thoughts from anyone? Any closing questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Play dumb question asker, like I said, because I am the least qualified person to answer all of your nutrition questions, so to speak. Although skipping lunch is the best way to best diet, right, Andrew? We do need t-shirts for that, just because it's a thing. And Andrew rarely eats lunch, so he actually shows me that is the best thing to do, also, as he's shaking his head over there. So Dasha, gut health, kind of thinking about that as a whole, and for me, so last year, again, you'll be surprised, I stressed my body out, did a bunch of Spartan races, backpacking, all these pieces and whatnot, fared pretty well. I think I even started, not I think, I started consuming some baking soda, which completely rips apart your stomach, all of these pieces. And coming out of that, I actually had like a rash just randomly, like a contact dermatitis almost pop up, right? So I was like, all right, gut health, all this stuff. For me, super acute, something very specific. But in the moment, I'm like, what do I do? I go to this allergist and they give me, they do the oil blot test, like with all the pokes. And I literally reacted to every single one, including saline. And it's like, no wonder I'm getting red spots under my eyes because, again, saline, and just like I'm allergic to myself. Has since resolved, but in that moment, it was go take Allegra just every single day. That was the thing that I was told to do. For somebody who, maybe they're not at that point where they want to go get tested and they want to go down that road, but they're experiencing something that they might say, hey, I'm always bloated. I'm not regular. I don't feel well. I think I eat well. I'm not sure what's going on. What are maybe 2 or 3 things that somebody could, or maybe everybody should do even, to help promote positive gut health, or just make sure that things are going as well as they possibly can on that side before they start to take other actions, even that they can do on their own?
Mm-hmm. So, when we think about the basics of good gut health, we want to focus on fiber intake in general. And if you seriously think that there's something, maybe a little bit deeper, the easiest and fastest way that I would recommend is one, get a stool test, not from your doctor, but just grab a GI map. I'm happy to order one for you if you need one. You just go to my bio, click on the shop link, and you can order it yourself. Like, I don't even have to be involved. But I would get a stool test if that's of concern with you, because I think a lot of people too, they need motivation in order to take action. And so, in order to be motivated enough to eat healthy, eat right, like seeing something is wrong may be motivating for you. So you can start there. I always recommend also getting blood work twice a year. So we also have, again, you can go to my link in bio and just order your own basic blood work, hormone panels, whatever you need. But I would start there testing wise. But Steve, you had specifically said when I don't want to be tested. So when we think about basic good gut health, 12 hours of fasting is plenty for good and optimal gut health. So stopping eating at 6 p.m., starting eating at 6 a.m. When we think about fiber intake, you want to be consuming around 14 grams per 1,000 calories that you're consuming. So for majority of America, that's 28 to 35 grams of fiber a day. A mix of soluble and insoluble is going to happen naturally through the foods that we eat, but as much as you can focus on soluble fibers, the easier they are to digest. Insoluble fibers is more like the roughage. You think about like celery straw, like the strings in it, that's going to be more of like the insoluble fibers and can add more constipation to people just because it's like roughage, right? It's like stuck. It's not digestible, and it's not necessarily binding and pulling in water like that soluble fiber is going to be doing. And then daily walks after you eat, bowel training. So basically like sitting on the toilet after you eat 30 to 45 minutes and creating a routine. I always like to start by explaining and going back to a baby. So if we were thinking of a baby and how we train them, there's 2 things. We train them how to eat, and then we also train them how to eat on a schedule, right? Because if my baby is eating, sleeping, pooping on a schedule, I know that I can go to bed at night and not have to worry about a thing. Like I won't be woken up. So similarly, if you can train your body to eat, sleep, poop on routine, the body is more in routine and more likely to do it. People who are like, oh, I grab and go in the morning, like I'm such in a rush, like you're not giving your body time and space that it needs in order to complete its own routine. So training and eating at the same time, going to the bathroom, or at least sitting on the toilet at the same time every single day, it has been shown in the literature to help with people who have irregularity. There are other tricks too to regularity too, like kiwis, prune juice, ginger, all the things that you can do from a food as medicine perspective. But when it comes to like consuming enough fiber, I think that's first and foremost in this world that we live in right now, where everyone is going carnivore and animal based and saying that vegetables are the death of us, when 6 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetable has been the crutch of where we have come from. And I would highly recommend you make sure that you consume those things for the antioxidant capacity, for the polyphenols. All these things are feeding the microbiome differentially. So it's really important to include as much diversity in your diet as possible. And that leads me to, diversify. If you are constantly eating blueberries this week, go out and eat a freaking blackberry. Like, I don't freaking care, but just try something different. And it doesn't have to be huge swings. If you love oats, fine, keep having the oats, maybe try cream of rice or something, a coconut pudding or something like that. And I'm a creature of habit. So I hear you when it's like easy to just keep the same things because your brain doesn't have to think about it. And that's where I keep things super plain and simple for myself for lunch and dinner. I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to get in vegetables at lunch, and I'll just rotate those when I can. Like last week I bought broccoli. This week I'll buy cauliflower, something like that.
So what I took away from there is you shouldn't eat cold chicken and rice every day for like a year for lunch.
No,
No.
probably not.
No, okay. Got it. Got it.
Hot chicken and rice though.
Fried?
chicken.
Hot chicken,
Fried
Spicy?
fried chicken.
from
Fried
Taco Bell.
spicy hot chicken.
Their Diablo sauce is pretty good. It's fine though.
Fried
But-
spicy hot chicken is pretty delicious. I'm just gonna say.
Sounds like acid reflux just waiting to happen.
Yeah,
It's-
that both ends.
It sounds like adding more stress to yourself, so you just feel better. So
I
Absolutely.
see what you're doing there.
Mhm. Some of that pee. But as we wrap up here, I mean, anything that you'd like to share with the audience, any way that you want them to get in contact with you, if they do have more questions, anything you'd like to plug as we wrap up here, and say thank you for your time.
Well, first off, thank you guys for having me. Thank you guys for listening. If you want any free education, we have so many free PDFs. I talk all about fiber, probiotics, lower belly pouch, constipation, all these things, all on my Instagram channel. How to improve your energy naturally, how the gut and skin is connected. And there's so many free resources on my Instagram channel. It's just at Dasha Fitness. If you need anything, holler at me in the DMs. I'm in there every single day. I'll send you a voice note. I'll help you as much as I can. We're all in this together in this healthcare system that we live in. And so whatever I can do to get you living a little bit healthier is my goal in life.
There we go. So you heard it here first from gut health specialist, pro researcher, entrepreneur, and just general great human being, Dasha. So thank you again so much for being here. Guys, if you can, again, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could rate, like, subscribe, and share this with someone that you think would really benefit. Because, I mean, obviously gut health is just so crucial for everybody to really master as we're going through a crazy time where you don't know if food's good for you. You don't know what people are telling you from a social media perspective. So definitely share this with someone that could use more clarity around that stuff. Until next time.